It was Christmas Eve. A snowstorm swept through a small countryside town, covering streets, rooftops, and trees in a cold, white blanket. Inside a modest house, the lights flickered faintly as a mother, Honor, tried to comfort her two young children, Lucas and Mariana. The family's father, Carlos, had lost his job months ago, and this Christmas would be the hardest of their lives. Meanwhile, outside, the wind howled like a wolf. Through the cracked window, Honor watched the darkness with worry, as the children asked for a simple Christmas gift. "I just want something that makes us happy, Mom," said Lucas, clutching the worn-out teddy bear he had inherited from his older brother. Suddenly, cutting through the oppressive silence, a distant sound emerged, a weak bark, almost muffled by the snow. Honor frowned and cautiously opened the front door. There, staggering in the cold, was a thin, dirty dog. Its eyes glistened, pleading for help. Anna's heart tightened. Honor held the trembling dog in her arms. The small, skinny body was covered in mud, snow, and fresh-looking cuts. Its large, brown eyes glistened, silently begging for something it hadn't felt in a long time: care. Anna's heart ached as she felt the fragile bones beneath its skin. It was like holding a living cry for help. Lucas and Mariana knelt beside their mother, their small hands gently stroking the dog's cold nose. "Mommy, he'll die if we don't take care of him," Mariana whispered, tears streaming down her face. Honor looked at her children and hesitated. With so little food in the house, it was already hard enough to feed the family. What would they do with another mouth to feed, even if it was just a dog? But then, the dog weakly licked her hand, almost as if to say, "Thank you for not leaving me behind." Honor felt a lump in her throat. "We'll give him a chance. Everyone deserves a chance," she said with quiet resolve. In the kitchen, they improvised a spot for the dog with what they had: old blankets and a cardboard box. The children rummaged through the cupboards and found a stale piece of bread and a little milk. When the dog started eating, the sound of its desperate hunger echoed through the small house. "It seems like he hasn't eaten in days," Honor thought, tears welling up in her eyes. As Estrela, as Lucas and Mariana decided to name him, finally rested, the children gathered around him, telling stories and trying to distract him from the pain. "Did you know, Estrela, that Santa Claus brings gifts to good children?" Lucas said, his eyes sparkling. "Maybe he'll bring a miracle for you too," he added, gently holding the dog's paws. That night, Honor and Carlos spoke in hushed tones. "What will we do if he needs medical care?" "We don't even have money to fix the broken window," Carlos said, worry etched on his face. Honor glanced at the children sleeping, cuddled up with the dog. "Look at them, Carlos. They're smiling again. He's brought something we had lost: hope." "We'll figure it out," she replied with quiet determination. But the situation was desperate. The next day, Honor tried to take the dog to an animal shelter, hoping it would have a better chance of survival there. However, as she arrived, the smell of disinfectant mixed with the sound of barking and whimpering broke her heart. "We're overcrowded, ma'am. We can't take in any more animals," the attendant said coldly. Honor looked down at Estrela, trembling in her arms, and knew he was her responsibility now. When she returned home, Carlos was waiting at the door, holding the little money they had saved for Christmas. "Let's use this to buy food for him," he said, placing it in Anna's hands. "Christmas isn't about gifts, it's about taking care of those who need it, right?" Honor nodded, her eyes filled with emotion. That night, Estrela seemed more comfortable. The children placed a red bow around his neck and hugged him as if he had always been part of the family. Mariana whispered something in his ear, as if it were a secret. I asked Santa Claus that you never be alone again, Estrela. I promise to take care of you forever. And then, something surprising happened. Estrela lifted his head and licked her cheek, for the first time wagging his tail. The little family erupted in laughter and applause, as if that simple gesture were a Christmas gift. It was more than that. It was proof that, even in the worst storms, small miracles can warm the coldest hearts. The bond that had formed in just 24 hours brought a strength no one had expected. But Honor didn't know that, in the days to come, Estrela would do much more than bring hope. He was about to prove that heroes don't always come with capes. Sometimes, they have forepaws and scars from battles they never chose to fight. The next morning, the snow still covered everything around them, but there was something different in the air. Honor woke up to the sound of the children laughing in the living room. It was music to her ears, a rarity after months of despair. She got up with a faint smile, but as she entered the room, she noticed something strange. Estrela was standing, restless, by the door. His body was tense, and he emitted a low sound, almost like a warning growl. Carlos went to the door, looking through the small broken window. He saw nothing, only the endless white of the snow. It must be the wind, he said, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling that Estrela seemed to share. But the dog wouldn't calm down. Something was wrong. That afternoon, while the children played with Estrela in the yard, Lucas found something buried in the snow, near the forest that surrounded the house. It was an object wrapped in a piece of old cloth. "What's this?" Lucas asked, as Mariana helped him dig it out. When they managed to free the package, they immediately called Honor and Carlos. The object appeared to be an old wooden box, with locks corroded by time. Inside, there were some coins, old notes, and a letter. The handwriting was shaky, written by hand, "Don't trust anyone. This is all I have left. Keep it safe." The family was in shock. Who could have left this here? And why? Carlos asked, uneasy. But before they could discuss it further, they heard something coming from the forest, hasty footsteps, crushing the snow. And then, a scream. "Hey! Is someone there?" Honor quickly called the children inside, but Estrela ran outside, as if he knew there was danger. Carlos followed him and saw, from a distance, two shadowy figures approaching. "That dog is with them," one of the voices shouted. Honor felt her heart race. Who were these people? And why were they so determined to reach them? The dog began to bark, fiercer than ever. It was hard to believe that this fragile animal, who could barely walk the day before, was now placing himself between the family and the unknown. Carlos tried to calm Estrela, but the men were getting closer. One of them held something in his hands. It looked like a heavy tool, maybe a crowbar. "Give back the box. It doesn't belong to you." Honor, terrified, pulled the children into the bedroom and locked the door. "Carlos, come in now," she screamed. But Estrela didn't back down. He growled, guarding the entrance of the house with all the strength he had. When Carlos finally managed to pull Estrela inside, the men were just a few meters away. One of them kicked the door hard, but it held firm. Honor, trembling, held her children. "Please, go away. We have nothing," she shouted, tears streaming down her face. But they didn't answer. They kept pounding, each blow echoing like a drum of desperation. Then, in the middle of the chaos, Estrela did something unexpected. He broke free from Carlos's hands, running back outside. Before anyone could stop him, the dog ran toward the man, barking furiously. There were screams, sounds of a struggle, and then silence. Honor covered her mouth, desperate. Estrela. Carlos slowly opened the door. In the snow, there were blood marks, paw prints leading back into the forest, and Estrela, lying down, wounded, but breathing. The man had fled. The family carried the dog inside, tears streaming down as they tried to stop the bleeding. He had been cut with a knife, a deep wound in his shoulder. "He saved us," Lucas whispered, sobbing. Mariana hugged the dog, her face wet with tears. "Don't let him die, Daddy. Please." Carlos, with his heart heavy, did everything he could. With clean cloths and the few medicines they had, he cared for Estrela throughout the night. "You're going to be okay, boy. You're stronger than all of us," he said, trying to believe his own words. That night, Honor cried alone in the kitchen, staring at the mysterious box. "Is it worth so much that someone would hurt an animal to get it?" she asked herself. But deep down, she knew that Estrela hadn't fought just for the box. He fought for the family that took him in, for the first home he ever had. And now, that home was stronger than ever, even if, for that to happen, a sacrifice had been made. As Estrela groaned softly in the corner of the room, each family member made a promise they would do whatever it took to protect that dog. After all, he had already given everything for them. That night, the snow was falling heavier. Inside the small house, the air was tense. Estrela, lying on makeshift blankets, could hardly lift his head. His breath was weak, but his eyes were fixed on the family, who took turns caring for him. Mariana, with tears running down her face, held his paw and whispered, "You were so brave. Please, don't leave us." Carlos sat next to the wooden box that Estrela had protected with his own life. Inside it, the coins and the notes still provoked more questions than answers. Where did this come from? Why were those men so desperate for it? He murmured, restless. But Honor was focused on something else. "And what does it matter, Carlos? All I know is that he saved us. This dog, he's more than special. He chose us." That same night, something unexpected happened. The silence of the house was broken by another sound, this time, the noise of tires sliding on the snow. A car stopped in front of the house, its headlights illuminating the small garden. Honor and Carlos exchanged looks of panic. "Did they come back?" she whispered. Carlos grabbed a piece of wood, the only thing he had for protection, and went to the door. But before he could open it, Estrela, as if resurrecting from a state of near unconsciousness, tried to get up. Estrela, despite his weakness, dragged himself to the door, his trembling paws touching the frozen ground. His gaze, firm and determined, was fixed on the entrance. Mariana, surprised by the dog's reaction, ran to him, trying to stop him. "Estrela, no, you need to rest." But the dog didn't listen. With great effort, he stood up, his sore muscles, and moved toward the door. His breath was difficult, but his eyes showed immeasurable courage. Honor and Carlos were paralyzed. They didn't know what to do, but something in Estrela's behavior told them that he knew what was happening. He didn't want more harm to come to the family. He was determined to protect them. Carlos, still holding the piece of wood, slowly opened the door. When the door opened, he saw something he never expected. Standing in the snow were two figures, But they were not the same men from the previous night. They were strangers, dressed in dark clothes, with serious expressions. The man in the lead appeared older, with a grey beard and piercing eyes. "We're here to recover what's ours," said the man, his voice low, but filled with authority. "The box, the wooden box. It doesn't belong to you." Honor felt a chill run down her spine. These weren't the same men who attacked them, but the threat was clear. "What do you want? What's inside that box?" Carlos asked, his voice firm but tense. The man looked at Estrela, who was still standing between the family and the strangers. The dog was weak, but he did not back down. The man's gaze softened, perhaps with surprise or a touch of respect. "This dog. He was braver than many men I've met. But he doesn't have the power to decide what happens with this box." Honor looked at Estrela, who seemed to understand the man's words, but his eyes didn't waver. It was as if Estrela was saying that he didn't care what was in the box. He only cared about the family who took him in, about the house that was now his. "You will give the box back, and we will live in peace," insisted the man, his voice now more intense. But Estrela, with one last effort, took a step forward, as if challenging them. The man looked at him, and a heavy silence fell over everyone. The dog, despite his condition, seemed to be the family's greatest defense, the purest form of love and loyalty. And at that moment, no one dared move forward. Honor and Carlos were in shock, but something inside each of them changed right there, in front of Estrela, who didn't falter for a second. The dog, with all his bravery, stood firm, protecting what he knew was his family. The man, looking at the scene, finally sighed. "Perhaps you're right. Perhaps the power isn't in the box, but rather, in what it represents." He made a slow movement, as if deciding to stop insisting. "We'll leave," the man said to the other figure by his side. "The box can wait. But this dog can't. He's proven to be more than any of us." And then, without another word, they turned and walked away, disappearing into the snow. The door closed with a collective sigh from the family. Estrela, now exhausted, stumbled back to the corner of the room, finally lying down with a small whimper of relief. Moriana ran to him, hugging his head. "You did this, Estrela. You saved us." Honor and Carlos approached, tears in their eyes, but with a soft smile. "He chose us, Carlos," Honor said, her voice full of emotion. "And we'll take care of him forever." That night, Estrela fell asleep in peace, protected by the love of the family who took him in. And while the snow continued to fall outside, the wooden box remained silent, with its secrets still guarded. Because, in the end, what really mattered wasn't what was inside, but the unbreakable bond that Estrela had formed with the family. And that lesson, no one would ever forget. The car stopped abruptly in front of the house. Inside, a figure stumbled out, holding a lantern that swayed in the darkness. Honor, terrified, pulled the children into the bedroom, while Carlos stood frozen by the door with a piece of wood in his hands. The air seemed to freeze even more, but before Carlos could open the door, an unexpected sound interrupted him. Estrela, who could barely breathe just seconds before, got up from where he lay. Every step was painful, but he didn't stop. He made his way to the door, growling, his gaze fixed as if he knew he needed to protect his family again. Carlos tried to hold him back, but the dog pushed forward, determined. The door opened, revealing an elderly woman, her face marked by time, and eyes filled with desperation. "Please," she said, her voice trembling as much as her hands. "Did you find my box?" Carlos lowered the piece of wood, but remained cautious. "Who are you? Why is this box so important?" he asked, his voice firm. The woman looked at Estrela, still standing in front of the family, guarding them even though he was injured. Her eyes filled with tears. "He protected it, didn't he? This dog, he always knew how to choose the right people." The woman introduced herself as Dona Beatriz and told a story that captivated everyone in the room. The box, filled with old coins and jewelry, was the last connection to her family. Decades ago, during a war tragedy, she had buried the treasure in secret to protect the few memories left of her home. Recently, in a desperate act, she hired 2 men to help her dig it up, but they betrayed her, wanting to steal everything. She barely escaped with her life and had been searching for the trail of what they had taken ever since. As the woman spoke, the children looked at Estrela. He stared at her with sad eyes, as if he understood every word. Then Dona Beatriz said something that made Anna's heart tighten even more. "This dog, he belonged to my son. He disappeared years ago, but he was always a protector. He saved my life once. And now, it seems like he saved yours too." Anna felt tears roll down her face before she could stop them. "He found us when we needed him most," she said, her voice choked. Lucas held Estrela's paw, while Morena sobbed quietly. "He's our hero." Estrela, however, was growing weaker. His wounds were beyond what the family could care for. He struggled to stay on his feet, but his legs gave way. Dona Beatriz knelt beside him, gently stroking his muzzle. "You've always been strong, my friend. Stronger than anyone." Anna and Carlos decided to act quickly. They took Estrela to the veterinarian, even knowing the risk of facing the frozen roads. During the drive, no one spoke, only the sound of the wheels on the snow and the children's sobs filled the car. Estrela lay on Lucas's lap, while Morena clutched his red ribbon. When they arrived at the vet, the doctors did everything they could. The family waited for hours, feeling like a part of them was slipping away with each passing minute. When the vet came out, the look on his face said it all. He fought hard, but his body was exhausted. "He's gone, peacefully, surrounded by your love." The silence was overwhelming. Lucas screamed in pain. Morena hugged the red ribbon tightly, while Anna and Carlos tried to hold back their own tears to console the children. Dona Beatriz, who had waited with them, placed her hand on Anna's shoulder. "He did everything he needed to do. He saved you, just like he saved me in the past." The next day, they buried Estrela in the backyard, beneath the old oak tree covered in snow. The children placed the red ribbon on the small mound while Carlos planted a wooden plaque, "Estrela, our protector, forever in our hearts." Dona Beatriz left the family, but not without leaving something behind. She insisted that they keep the contents of the box, saying that Estrela had chosen their family as his new mission. "You need this more than I do now," she said with a sad smile. With the money, Anna and Carlos rebuilt their lives. More importantly, they learned the value of love and courage, everything thanks to a dog who came as a Christmas miracle. Estrela didn't just save a family's Christmas. He proved that the purest love comes from the most unexpected places. His sacrifice touched hearts, showing that even in the darkest moments, there is light. Sometimes, it comes from a dog, shining like a star in the darkest night. Sometimes, the greatest lessons come from the smallest creatures. Estrela came to us when everything seemed lost. He didn't just bring hope, he showed us the true meaning of courage, sacrifice, and love. He wasn't just a dog. He was an angel who chose us to show that, even on the darkest nights, there is a star shining to guide us. Life is like this snow, says Honor, holding Carlos's hand as she watches the children. It erases everything. But there are marks that never fade, those made of love. Estrela left us, but his light will never fade. Share this story to remind the world that love, even coming from a dog, can change everything. Thank you, Estrela, for being our Christmas miracle. If this story touched your heart, imagine how many others need to hear about Estrela's sacrifice. Share it now and spread this message of love and courage. Tag someone who loves animals and knows they are true angels in our lives. Let's make Estrela shine in the hearts of people all over the world. Animals have the power to change lives. Leave a heart in the comments if you believe Estrela was a true hero. Help keep Estrela's memory alive. Share this story and remind everyone that sometimes the greatest miracles come from the most unexpected places. Estrela showed us that love transforms. Now it's your turn. Share this story and be a part of this moving legacy.